Especially with lower crop prices, it becomes even more important to maximize bushels. And generally, you get one pass with the planter in the spring, and that sets the foundation for your whole year. So the planter, we consider the planter to be the most important pass on the farm every year. And there are a lot of simple maintenance tips, things to look at that can greatly improve planter performance. And first thing that guys want to look at is when they've got the planter hitched to the tractor, your 7x7 bar, when the planter is lowered to the ground and in the field in planting position, we want this 7x7 bar to be level. It should be perfectly level. So if it's running downhill or uphill, you change the height of your hitch on the tractor to level this bar up. From there, I would recommend guys look at all their drive chains. You've got your transmission drive chains, and then most planters have a drive chain on each row unit. If those are rusty or have a stiff spot, it causes that meter to skip and chatter and jump. So we recommend that guys just replace their chains every year. They go through bolt cutters, strip old chains off and put new chains on. It's probably one of the most cost-effective things they can do to improve performance, is just replace your chains every year. We like to have guys here, your parallel arms on the row unit. Each one of those, there are upper and lower parallel arms, which they would be here and here. Each one of those has a bushing in them. So we recommend guys come back, and probably a guy on each side, pick up the row unit and shuck it from side to side. If there's a lot of play in that row unit from side to side, we recommend that guys replace the bushings in those parallel arms. No-till coulters here on the front. If guys are running no-till coulters, it's very important that the no-till coulter not run deeper than your seed disc. If your seed disc is running 2 inches and your no-till coulter is at 2 1/4, 2 1/2, what that does is give you a false seed trench, a false bottom. So what we recommend there is guys set the planter each row on a 2x6 and adjust their no-till coulter when it's setting completely on the 2x6. Adjust their no-till coulter so it's 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch above the opener disc. The opener discs new are 15 inches. Those we consider worn out when they reach 14 1/2. So if a guy checks his discs and they're 14 5/8 and he's planting a lot of acres, it would probably be a good idea to change those blades before the season. 14 3/4, you probably got another season in them. Another thing with the opening discs, they need right here where they contact, where the blades come together, we want 2 inches of contact. So the best way to do that is we'll take a business card. In the top, run it down till it stops. In the bottom, run it up till it stops to the contact points, and then measure between the business cards. If we've got 2 inches, 1 3/4 to 2 1/4 inches there, that's good contact points. And we also recommend that we check that, roll the disc around and check it like in 3 places around the disc. Gauge wheels, those should be, when they're in the planting position, which is up, those, when you spin them up, those should just lightly contact the seed disc. If they are away from the seed disc, what happens if you have a gap, a lot of times you'll get dry soil between the disc and the blade, or the blade and the wheel, and that will cave into the seed trench, so you're laying the seed in dry soil. This particular planter does not have them installed yet, but Keaton seed firmers go right behind the seed tube, and they actually firm the seed into the soil. That Farm Journal has multiple studies on seed firmers, over 10 years of data that show a seed firmer will add up to 6 bushels every year to your yield. And us seed firmer guys can put on seed firmers for about $40 a row. So it's probably another one of the, right along with the chains, one of the most cost-effective things you can do to improve stand and increase yield. Seed tubes, as your seed discs wear, and you remove shims and keep that contact point at the front, a lot of times you will bring that disc into the edge of the seed tubes, and what will happen is your discs will rub on the edge of the tube and create a feathering. It'll get thin and feathered and jagged. So guys want to check the seed tubes at the base where the seed exits for thin spots, because anything that affects that drop of that seed, you know, slows it down, that affects spacing. So we want the seed tubes to be good condition, no jagged edges, and also at the front of the seed tube, comes under it is what we call the seed tube protector. That's right on the shank. That seed tube protector wants to extend just below the seed tube. Closing disc, closing wheels. Oh, they run, we want to run a gap here between each wheel, the inside of each wheel, we want at least a 2-inch gap. And most guys, we figure, we want this gap to be equal to their planting depth. So if they're planting 2.5 inches deep, we want 2.25, 2.5 inches here between the gauge wheels. These gauge wheels usually have cams on them, so they can be adjusted side to side. We recommend a guy take it out in the field or even in the driveway and create his seed trench, and then just look behind with the planter on the ground, use these cams to adjust these gauge wheels so they're centered right over that seed trench. Usually most planters either have a screw adjustment here or a T-handle. This is what adjusts the pressure, the down pressure on your gauge wheel or closing wheel. The down pressure on the closing wheel, we want to make sure that we're firming and closing that trench all the way down to seed depth. So the best way to do that, again, take your time, first day of planting, get all this out of the way, but we'll take and do a cross section of the seed trench with a spade or small garden trowel and dig up that seed and make sure where we close the trench, there's no airspace between the seed and the top of the trench. So if you've got an airspace between the seed and the top of the trench, you want to go 1 notch heavier on your closing wheel downforce. Fertilizer systems, most fertilizer systems are either, this is a piston pump, some planters have a squeeze pump, this particular fertilizer pump is ground driven off the ground, some are hydraulically driven. On those, we just recommend that a guy check screens. Most every system has a check valve somewhere near the fertilizer opener. Check if those have got screens in them, that the screens are clean and there's no plugging on the hoses. As far as planting depth, again, most of them have a handle here with notches to adjust your planting depth. Many planters, what we're striving for with the corn crop is to get it all out of the ground evenly, all plants emerging within 48 hours of each other. So a lot of times, even though your settings may be identical here across the planter, manufacturing variances and different tolerances will make a variance. So again, we recommend guys set each row unit down, their gauge wheels down on a 2x6 and measure the gap between the concrete and the opening disc, and just go through and make sure you adjust all handles so that measurement is the same all the way across the planter. Fertilizer openers, most guys, we want to make sure that the fertilizer is being placed at least 2 inches to the side of the seed. It varies between 2 and 3 depending on the amount of product guys are putting beside the seed. So a heavier fertilizer load usually will go 3 inches to the side. But again, that's the same thing. Guys drop the planter down in the field or the driveway and just check the relationship of your fertilizer slot to your seed slot and make sure you've got 2 inches off either way.